How do you live a life that is significant without striving, meaningful in the mundane, and overcomes in spite of obstacles? Welcome to The Conversation, the Significant Life podcast with Jen and Marcus Jones.
Welcome back to the Significant Life podcast. We're so excited to have you guys a part of this conversation today. You are in store for a really special conversation that if you're anything like me, I'm always wanting to lean into voices and input and wisdom, especially as it relates to my parenting.
Yeah,
where I can get better because it's such a vital area. And so we have special guests on today, and Ben and Brittney Serpell are with us. And Jen, it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah. So we met back not that long ago.
Right.
I think I've known of you because we have so many mutual friends, but we met in real life. And I think that I'm excited for this conversation because I do think there's a lot about what we desire in our homes and how we pursue that in our homes just resonates. That I think you guys have a ton of wisdom that people can glean from. And you just wrote a book and released the book, Imperfect Parenting, which I love the title, and we'll dive into it. But I'll talk more about all of your resume. You guys are both been in ministry a long time. You've written books. You co-host other podcasts. You have your own podcast. You're been in ministry staff at churches. You speak a lot in many different places. But why don't you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your home?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you go first?
All right. Well, Ben and Brittney Serpell, as you said, we're just telling these guys we've been married 20 years in a few months here. So if you're watching, every time we say that we've been married 20 years, someone looks at us and says, how is that real? And it's not face cream. That's part of it. But it's really just, we started young. We started very young. We were 18 and 19 years old when we got married.
Yeah.
Our first baby came along. We found out a year and a month in. I think I asked Brittany, are you sure? Are you sure? About 5 times when we found out she was pregnant, because it was a big surprise, and we're so happy. She's almost 18, and we have 2 more. That's Delaney. Adeline's almost 14, and then Lincoln, our little boy, is 11.
Yes, that is that. We were like, what's unique about our story is we met at 14 and 15 in a mountain town of 3,500 people. So
from Australia, you should say that.
Were you in Australia, Brittany, visiting?
No, he came to this little mountain town because there's one person he knew in America, and she happened to be married to my youth pastor.
Yep.
No way.
Talk about God creating a moment.
Yep.
And he arrived on my birthday, and I turned 14, and we were inseparable for 6 weeks. Yep. We have a fun story. We went to the first Jesus Culture Ever conference that they put on, and we both got just radically rocked by the Lord. We took it back to our church, which my dad was pastoring, Danny Silk, my dad is. And we just kind of got to explode in the church and just praying for people. It was really fun. So that's been the foundation of our relationship. And fast forward, Ben came back for school ministry, did that. I graduated. He graduated school ministry. I graduated high school. I wanted to be engaged before 18. He said no. I said, come on. He proposed the day before I turned 18. So I was 17 and engaged, and 3.5 months later, we got married. And yeah, we have this really fun, full life where we love each other. We enjoy each other still. We want to be with each other more than anyone else, which I think is so fun. And our kids are just this extra glitter of fun in our life.
Yeah.
So, okay, I do have a question. And then I want to dive into how you get there to everything you just described, and that your kids can be a glitter of fun. I think some people are like, how do I want to actually be with my spouse all the time and have kids that are a glitter of fun? But having teenagers, because your kids are not quite all teenagers. You have an 11-year-old, but then up to 18. Knowing that you met and I don't know if you fell in love or knew you were the one or whatever at 14 and 15 and then engaged by 17. How do you feel about that now, having kids that I don't know. That just made me go, oh my goodness.
Well, we joked the first time when Delaney hit 14 that she wasn't allowed to go outside in the summer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Stay inside. And now Addie is the same age. I don't know. We are really mature kids. I think we just had pretty intense drive, especially to the Lord and our identity. And so that wasn't a question for my parents. So I feel like they had a lot of security knowing that, okay, they know who they are, they want to grow. I guess it's the best thing that could ever happen is that they do it together.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that's probably the secret to marriage is that you keep growing together, because when one person stops and the other one keeps going, it's hard to enjoy each other because you're on a different scale.
You're in competition as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition.
Yeah. I think the honest first response to your question is, what were our parents thinking?
Right. I was like, okay, here we go. And I know Brittany, I know your parents, and I really respect and admire them. They have an entire ministry, Loving on Purpose. And it's just all about all of this and going, wow. And they gave that the thumbs up. Okay.
I rode my roommate's bike because I couldn't work in America still legally. I rode his bike to Starbucks and sat down with him, and they said, let's do it. Yes.
He couldn't work either.
So, yeah.
So they had a lot of faith.
They were saying yes to potential.
They were definitely.
There you go.
Potential. That's good.
Yeah, this is what Brittany said. It's what were our parents thinking, and I think our heart-to-heart connection with our kids at this point in life together really is the thing. Like the ability to influence their heart. When that goes away,
yeah, definitely.
Good.
So, one of the things that I really drew out of so much of what you guys have been talking about on socials and what you're writing about is in really having a sense of vision for your family, setting out toward the right goal. You talk a lot about how, there's parenting toward goals, but they're not necessarily good goals, right? And can you guys talk a little bit about how you have framed parenting toward health, a godly vision for it? You talk about the imperfect nature of our parenting, which, I'm with Jen. When I saw the title of the book, I'm like, that book's for me because I'm that. But like, can you talk a little bit about a concept of vision and goal setting for your family as parents?
Yeah, actually, after we met, I went and bought your tribe program that you have, and I started going through it, and I just laughed kind of the whole way through because all I could think about is, wow, we say the same thing in a different way. Like we have the same heart and a different expression and maybe different emphasis even. And I love really you're just really targeting what do I want to provide and produce in my home requires that I give it attention and help lead and guide them towards this instead of just a free-for-all, hope this works out. I have a saying that culture happens one of two ways, on purpose or on accident. And I think a lot of families happen on accident, like this culture that they have, and then they look at it and go, I don't want this culture. Well, it happens because you didn't take the initiative to refine it, nurture it, guide it, produce something different that you enjoy living in. So,
yeah. And this, that kind of culminated into this product we have now, which really started as us as a family going, how do we do that? How do we set a vision in front of us and go after it? And so we call it the Culture Creed, which looks like Brittany's dad sitting in front of us with a whiteboard, and our kids were little. He had some Skittles or popcorn.
Yeah, I think it was both.
And he would ask questions, and then we would just respond. And then we get all these words to a question like, what's the strength of your family? What's the passion of your family? What's the legacy of your family? And then, so we ask these questions, and then through that, we get all these responses, which culminates into one sentence with three main components of who the Serpells are. And that's lived on our living room wall for five plus years now.
At least, yeah.
But our kids got to be involved in this is who we are. So we have moments where we're sitting together and we'll look at that again and go, okay, how are we doing? What needs to adjust? What needs to grow? What needs to, so.
I love it. If most people are listening to this either on a drive or a run, but if anyone's watching on YouTube,
hey,
you're right. As you're talking, I'm like, whoa, because
that wasn't even on purpose, but it's totally like, yeah, you're totally right.
We have the Jones Tribe values, and it is a list of words that came out of a series of questions. And I love, it's so true. I like the culture creed, because the culture that you are creating, you created it, whether you meant to or not. It is in your home, actually I mean, maybe not the purpose that you're hoping. And I think there's always hope to shift that culture with incredible intention and perhaps, the culture creed.
Yeah. And I resonate even with how you guys sat down to create that with it. It's not necessarily, I almost listened to it and what you're saying, like, it's not that you created it. It's almost that it was distilled from what was already there. Right. It's like, it's different than like aspirational. Like we hope to do it's more of like, this is who we are. And yes, there's choice in here, there's intention, but it's like, this is what we are all about.
Yeah.
And like, that's funny that it is right there, because we just had a similar conversation just this past week with him. I literally walked by this thing and was like, nope, that's not who we are.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? And there's something really powerful about rooting the family in something that's that like stable and not going anywhere. That is really cool. And I like that you guys did it. You got to tell me more about the doing it with Skittles thing. We didn't incorporate Skittles, but that sounds like a great idea.
It's funny. So we do have 4 teenagers, and I know a lot of people listening, maybe they're getting to hear this from the early littles phase and they can start now, but sometimes teens, you're like, oh, and I don't think it's ever too late. But the conversations that we've been having, it shifts a little bit in how we're moving into, and I want to hear what you think, but we feel like we're moving a little bit from less control, more influence, which is probably always true. But there is an element of like, no, I'm holding your hand when you cross the street when they're little, there's a little bit element of control, but really more into coach. And, but as a result, I don't want them to be afraid to talk to me. I don't. And you made a statement. I heard you say that I think it was in a reel or on a podcast. I heard you say that our kids won't come to us if we as parents are a scary place for their messes. And I more than ever, because I'm not as in much control. I can't hold their hand, grab their hand across the street. They're driving. They're making decisions that I have no idea. I mean, well, Life 360, but I try not to go on it too much because I'm like, hey, like I'm trying to raise kids that will make some good decisions. And if they don't, and they make a mess, that they will come talk to me. So can you unpack that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, it's very much a conversation we have about all different areas. We have our podcast called Imperfect Parenting. It's Ben and I, and then we have our friend Seth Dahl come on once a month. But we are talking about sex, which is a really scary topic, or sexuality. I mean, to a lot of parents, I will say it's a scary topic. It's not so scary for our family because we've been talking about it. And so we actually had our girls on the podcast to talk about this and said, what do you think parents need? And Adeline, who is nearly 14, she says, we need to feel safe to have this conversation with you. And so we have created this culture we've chased after. I have to be the safest place for my kid's biggest mess, because if I'm not, they will go to anyone that they feel safe with, which usually is their peers. Which, how helpful and wise are our peers that are going through the same thing, and so it's really about how we do a good job of creating a safe place is I manage me in the wake of your scary.
So break that down.
I don't react to whatever you bring to me. I respond. I have maturity. I have security, because that's another thing is a lot of parents think my child's mess is a direct reflection to my own identity. And it's not.
Right.
That's what we think it as. And so paying attention to, okay, they're on a journey, especially teenagers, journey of whatever's going to come their way. Like Delaney's about to go off to school ministry in Reading, which is 3 hours away. She's, we're not going to set boundaries on her curfew, her phone. I hope that we've done a really great job. And I would say yes, because of how she still invites us in. And all that has to do with, I managed myself when you were scary.
When you were scary, because there's going to be moments that they're scary, that they scare us. I think there's times that, yes, the conversation is, I learned something I was not shocked, but surprised by. I mean, like, oh, and even though I was a teenager, so like, that's okay. And they can come with scary stuff. I love that you say that you manage yourself though, so that you're not scared. And they don't
Yeah.
they don't see that. They don't see that important. Ben, what about like dad point of view? I know with daughters, my husband always is like, I feel like the girls are telling you all that stuff. But my son actually like tends to go to Marcus more, especially on the like we're talking lots of relation stuff. We're talking lots of sex over here. There's lots of sex talk happening because just the age and stage.
Yes.
And what's
sometimes we include our kids in the conversation.
That's real.
No, yeah, we're just being real. No.
All right.
But yeah, so what I mean, how does that play out? How does that look different for you? Or I mean, is it exactly the same? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that question gets me thinking about a story that Brittany put in the book. That's probably one of the hardest seasons we went through with Delaney, our oldest, where she was trying to shock us. I think she's trying to get us to react,
Paddles.
and okay, respond, and there's this moment that was one of those life-shaping moments for me as a dad, where I realized her pushing me away, her comments that feel painful and create disconnect is actually a cry from my little girl saying, "Daddy, will you fight for me?"
Oh,
And it's stolen. I stole that from Dr. Meg Meeker. She has a book called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters.
yes.
So I was reading this book right at the right time. I read that part at just the right time at a dance she was at. There's this whole story behind it. But this thing was created inside of me, which connects to what Brittany's saying is, I'm not shocked by you're scared. I'm not shocked by your pushing me away, because there's a deeper need that if I can show up as the bigger person, as the leader and the parent, I can actually answer the deeper need that you're not sure how to communicate.
Yeah. So as you're saying that, I'm one of the things that I'm aware of is kind of the maybe normal, or sort of maybe not normal is the right word, like typical, almost fear-based strategies that parents then employ.
Yeah.
So that they, whether that's trying to, command a situation, I'll just control it. Yeah. I'll figure out a way to bubble my family, my kids, like I've got an idea. We're all moving to Nome, Alaska, and we're just gonna, can you guys talk a little bit about like how you operate without pendulum swinging into these sort of fear-based tactics that I think are so easy to fall into as parents? How have you guys done that in your family? Because it sounds like you're showing up super present, and then managing that fear on the back end. Talk about how you've done that.
Yeah, I mean, knowing the role in the season that you're in is really important. Jen, you mentioned about kind of coaching. I always say that the elementary age years and younger, you're kind of the cop role, and then you go into the coach role, and then as a teenage to adult, you become the consultant.
Yeah.
You are really someone that they're just confiding in. So knowing your lane in that season really is helpful, because that's how you learn when and how much to empower or direct in that shared control. Because you can share control or you can lose it all. And that's what I don't think parents realize, is they have this illusion. I'm in control. You can't talk to them. You can't do that. Well, guess what? They are, because kids are geniuses and they always find a way around a no when they feel like they should be empowered and they need something. So when I walked away from the Lord at 16, and I met this guy on the internet, all that's in the book too. Thankfully, God had a different plan and brought Ben back into my life. But my parents knew in that moment, if they told me no, I would figure out how to get a yes, because I needed something. I needed this relationship. I was searching for something. So it's better to share control. So I got to date this guy. What that looked like was in my living room. That was
Oh, okay.
So adjusting to, we can share this control or we're going to lose it all. So I would encourage parents to figure out, how do you share control? How do you hear what the need is? I tell parents all the time, really the only thing you control is permission, opportunity, and resources. The rest of it is just this illusion that you can control their mouth or what they're thinking. You can't control any of that. You can't control their heart. So really manage your level of love and showing up. And then as a parent, when you do have to have boundaries, there's just certain things that we have, and the rest of it is out of our control.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I'd add to that, and just on this topic of shared control, from a young age, we gave lots of choices to our kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it started with things like, do you want the blue cup or the red cup? And then it progressed. And then mixed with that is lots of questions too. We're asking lots of questions to really draw out what's happening inside of them. Because the truth is, I have no idea what's happening inside of them. I especially have no idea what's happening inside of Brittany. So lots of questions, right? There's this question that's drawing this out. And I think that's one of the ways, and really one of the most practical tools in doing a good job with me.
Okay.
Is I'm going to give you a choice and let you feel like you actually have some control of your life, because you do. I control myself. That's it. So here's some choices that make me feel safe. It's not two choices that freak me out. It's choices and questions that move us towards the goal. But it's that culture, really. That's part of the culture again. It's creating this experience in our home that you have a say.
Yeah. Okay. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask you guys about how you have gotten to that place of authentic connection. And I know for me, it's been listen more, lecture less. And even as you were sharing your, 16-year-old online dating thing, like how would your parents know what felt like a yes to Brittany? So I'm guessing there was some conversation that happened there, maybe some questions digging to the bottom of like, okay, what is going on in this 16-year-old girl that she's now making different choices that she wasn't making just 6 months ago, and so I would love for you guys to talk about, because I'm hearing authentic connection as being such a big theme in your home. We desire that so much in ours. I think the human race right now is like desperate for it. So what are the keys that have helped you guys make the greatest authentic connections in your home?
You started off.
Yeah, my first thought to that question is I read a book a while ago from a friend, the guy who wrote Boundaries. I always forget his name.
Cloud. Is that Henry Cloud? Yes, Dr. Henry Cloud. Love him.
The other one.
Townsend, yes.
But he uses word a bunch in this book, and it's really about needs. But he's talking about learning to attune. And so I'm paying close attention to the needs. And that's one of the things I think that really has transformed my life personally. When I came back in the store with Brittany, we're having a hard time. We were getting ready to break up. This beautiful story we have going. We get to this point where we're going to break up, and we talked to our parents and said, we would like your permission, because we're teenagers, to break up. Like any normal teenage person says, right?
Wrong. You guys are atypical.
So we sit down, and Danny looks at me and he says, Ben, what do you need? I'd never processed that question in any relationship in my life. And so it set me on a journey personally that has become kind of the standard bearer in every relationship since. So I think that's the piece for me with my children, especially, is and marriage too, is what's my need? What do I have to communicate? And then what's the need that you have? And am I attuning to that? Because there's usually two different sides to this coin. And in our marriage, the way it plays out is, on a bad day, Brittany believes her needs are more important. On a bad day, I believe my needs are less important. So we're a great match.
We have a little of that dance going on over here too.
So, me becoming more mature, I'm leading my kids to, the assertive communicator. You have a need, and so do I. So that's my initial thought with that question, is
so great.
Learning to attune really well.
I think the two things I would add is we have high value for connection. Yeah. So whenever someone's disconnected in our family, it's pretty much the number one priority to get reconnected. And that goes for their sibling relationships. And I think that's a place where a lot of people tend to, forget or just throw into us normal to fight. Our kids don't do that very often. They don't get in these brawls or belittling of each other, because we have high levels of connection, and then we have high levels of respect. So as soon as someone violates that, we're all trying to figure out what you're going to do to clean up that mess. And so they hold us accountable, which is slightly embarrassing when that happens, when the two of us are no fun. It's usually Adeline, who's our middle. She's the spicy one of all of them. And she usually says, Mom, you're being a little rude, because it's usually me. And or they'll ask, what do you need? There's been seasons where Ben was a little bit more distant, and I think they noticed that, and so they were asking questions to me, and we get to do the same thing to them. Like, your relationship with your brother has been changing, and it feels a little bit disrespectful. What are you doing? What's going on? What do you need? And so that question, to go back to what Ben's saying, what do you need, is the number one question we ask in our home. And it's probably asked to everybody at least once a week, and it's a check-in point. But because we have high levels of connection and high levels of respect, we produce this place of authenticity where we all love to put our lives on display, because we champion one another. And that's a really beautiful place to live. And that's what we're fighting really hard to protect and really hard to give away. Like, this is how you win as a family, is staying connected.
Great question that you just offered to everybody. What do you need? That's a super, super great point of connection. Just like, as you said, just as a check-in, just as a standard practice. Great idea. So let me just throw this one at you too, because obviously we're in a world with lots of truth confusion, folks that our kids are growing up in a day and age, in an environment of ambiguity and confusion around just about everything. It seems like, to the point where it's like, reflect on how I grew up. These were not even things. They were not even questions. Now
we have a decade on you guys.
Now it's a thing.
We're still
yeah. And so, and I think, it's awfully easy. And we talked about that sort of control thing. It's awfully easy to have almost a bunker mentality of like, how do I shrink away and bubble everybody off? How are you guys navigating that on the foundation of this kind of connection and this openness of communication and questions you're asking with your kids? How are you navigating all of these ambiguities and questions and confusions that are a part of the culture that they're all swimming in?
Right.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Outside of their homes.
Yeah, outside of house. Yeah.
I think we're not afraid to have hard conversations with our kids. I think that's like you said, the bunker mentality, which means I want to remove you from all the scary that I see. I want to buffer you from all of the world. Well, how can they go out and be a light in the world if they're afraid of the world? And so I think that's the place of having these conversations and putting them in environments where they feel safe to ask questions. They feel safe to find truth, helping them guide. I love watching Adeline and Ben read the word together. Like, that is one of the places that they've connected so deeply in. And we figure out, okay, you're a youth leader now. All right, how do we help you get there? So I'm helping them on their own journey of establishing truth, identity, and being firmly planted in the word, because I know that they're going to go out there and they're going to represent Christ. And I want them to feel equipped in that. So if I hide them in my little cocoon and pretend like the world doesn't exist, when they go out for their first job and half the people their age that they're working with are she, thee, they, thems out there, how do you conduct yourselves? How do you display love? How do you be honoring in all of this? And so that's been really fun, especially for Delaney, that's what she's faced with right now. And she's like, I don't get it, because one guy his name's, let's say John, and then he's a he, she, and a they, them, and John, all in the same week. And I said, okay, well, what do you do with that? She goes, whatever the name tag says, that's who he is, because that's what he's asked to be. And I just love the stake of, I'm going to stay honoring regardless if we agree or not. And she just puts on display this really loving, kind person.
Yes.
And isn't adjusting to someone else's belief, because she knows her beliefs are.
Amen. Oh gosh. I love that. Ben, I want you to talk, but you are speaking my language, because I just seriously, I don't know who said it first. I don't know if it was an author, a movie, C.S. Lewis, I don't know. But, and it's on our board, that we pray that God not keep us safe, but that we are dangerous for him. And like, kind is fierce.
Yeah.
It's fierce. Jesus, it says that they'll know him by our love. And so we're sending I'm so for it to send our kids rooted and established on a foundation of big T truth, the Word of God. And I'm amazed that when you do that with such intention, it's a part of the culture of your home. It doesn't. My kids have had tons of experiences in similar situations, and it's not rocking their world or their faith at all, and they love really well. So that's awesome. Ben, what would you say?
I mean, you set me up perfectly right there, because I think that's what I'm thinking about is just the awareness of, or really the confronting nature of this question you're asking as a parent. What do I really believe to be true? Is the kingdom of God really at hand? Is it really in me? Do I really carry what Jesus talked about? Because either I do or I don't. And if I do, then kiddos, you are dangerous in the most loving kind of way.
Yeah.
And we live as such, so I just have this thing inside of me where I got around the right people at the right time in my life where I believe that, and I still do, and I'm so thankful, and I want to just keep turning that thing out to the point where my family can now, they can see when I'm praying for someone in public based on my body language.
It's true.
Love
They
it.
can't hear me.
No.
Like, this happened recently in some store.
We were in a taco store.
Yeah. And I came to sit down, and they're like, "You just pray for that guy?"
Yeah.
How'd you know? Because of the way you're holding your hands, and but it's become this normal thing. Like, this is who we are.
Yes.
I'm not scared of whatever's out there, because what's in me is way bigger than that.
Yeah.
What's in you, honey, is way stronger than anything out there, because the designer of the universe lives in us. And I think it just confronts this thing that's so easy to diminish, because it looks scary out there, and it looks, there's lots of smoke and mirrors, but it's just
very loud.
It's very loud.
It's loud. Yeah, well said.
Yeah, and what you're saying, what you end up communicating to your kids is actually you are an overcomer.
Yeah.
There's victory already built into who you are, and it's unspoken to them when that's how you handle yourself. If you try to shrink back and bubble them, what you're really communicating is you're at risk. You're going to get your butt kicked. It's all going down the drain somewhere. You didn't say all those things, but you're kind of communicating that if that's how you're headed. So I heard John Maxwell say something recently that you are where you are because you've led it to that point. And where you will be because you lead it there. Can you guys talk just to a second to maybe the parent that's listening, that's like, hey, great points. I haven't done any of that. And now, like, I feel like I'm behind the 8 ball. I've messed up. Now what do I do? Like, if I put a pin in it right now, how do I move forward now, having made some mistakes?
Yeah, I would just start with, and we have to do this in marriage too, when we coach marriage couples, is one of the pieces that we're often looking at is, hey, what's wrong with this picture? What are you doing wrong? And let me address all the problems. And the thing we encourage people sometimes, especially in the first week of working with them, is, hey, just put the problems down for a minute. Let's spend this week, 3 times this week, you will communicate to each other where the connection worked. And so the main point there that I'm working to make is that I'm retuning my focus to make the connection the most important thing. And there's all these problems to work on. There's all these things that scare me. There's all this stuff that I may have done wrong or that you're just messing up. But if that's all we talk about, then they will just continue to be in that cycle. And that's all I see. So paying attention to, how's that connection doing? Out of 10, if we're at a 2, okay, what can I do today? And it might start with love language. It might start with apologizing to the parent. That, hey, I've made a mess in how I treat you, how I talk to you. Here's what I'll be doing differently. You're the most important person in my life. And I have not been living that way. That's going to change today.
Yeah, I'm often telling parents, if you've got a mess to clean up, I would do that first. And then I would fight so hard to get my connection back.
That's so good.
Because I have no influence without connection.
That's right.
And if that's the thing I know most parents long for at any age, at any season, toddler to adulthood, is I want to have influence in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to have that means I have to have connection. So cleaning up your mess, and then you fight for connection. And again, you mark the course and say, I'm going to lead, and I'm not going to let go of pursuing connection, regardless if you choose it or not. I think that's the hard part. So a lot of parents want okay, I did the things, the kid isn't changed. Well, we didn't call it, childing. We called it parenting, which means you've got to step up and do it. So you have to keep the course, because until they actually believe you, they're probably not going to turn towards you. And that's usually where we miss it, is we get tired and we quit before we've gained their trust that we're actually leading them.
Contending the long game, long game. It's a long game. Okay. Well, I think that, thank you this has been a really fun conversation. Easy really. Conversation. My husband said, because I was buzzing in the door last minute before we were hopping on this podcast and all kinds of curveballs. And he's like, babe, this is going to be an easy conversation. There are people. So, but I do want, all of these nuggets have been amazing, but you can actually get so many more by picking up the book. The recent book that was just released. You're not too late. It just came out. It's called Imperfect Parenting. You can get it on Amazon. I know you guys also have the Imperfect Parenting podcast that can be listened to anywhere. Brittany, you also co-host another podcast with your father, right?
Yep. The KYLO Show.
The KYLO Show. And where else? Let's just lay it all out there. Where can they find you? Because I do think that parents are going to want to connect. So where can they find you guys?
So we do family coaching as well with
great.
two of us or just one of us. And that's at lovingonpurpose.com. And so just under coaching that you can find us. We're going to be doing some different things that we're really excited about with the book coming out, a little bit more group dynamics. So be on the lookout for that. Easiest place to know, we do challenges focused around parenting and different stuff. So get on the newsletter for Loving on Purpose. That's probably easiest way to stay up to date. Obviously our socials, but our podcasts are free content. And then the book, Jen, you and I released the book the same month because we're geniuses. I think, who doesn't want great summer reading, right?
I know.
So, that's super fun. And that is available on Amazon and imperfectparenting.co, which is, I think, offering a mini course there. So you can get that there.
Okay, awesome. Head on over. We'll put all of this in the show notes too, so people can actually go and click and all of the things. So thanks guys for the conversation. Great to be with you today. And I'm looking forward to doing something together again soon. Okay.
Thanks guys.
Thanks guys.